kooky, and it seems like they're just leaning into it. Like there's no course correction at all. Just leaning into the kooky.
Yeah.
Fun times.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. You're just like, it's there. I mean, it's not just there.
Yes.
It's everywhere. My news feed is dominated by it.
Yes.
Fox News, CNN, everyone. There's raids at Diddy's house.
The world of celebrity scandals seems to thrive on secrets whispered in dimly lit rooms, and the latest storm surrounding Meek Mill and Diddy feels like a legend unraveling in real time. It's a tale of glittering parties, whispered accusations, and an industry that seems to be teetering on a precipice. But what are we really looking at here? Just another messy tabloid saga? Or something far darker lurking beneath the surface?
So I would imagine if you're the CIA, you're like, okay, we're looking for people who have gone through these things in their life that have curated this kind of like personality type.
Well, isn't it just like part of the gig? Like here's a for instance. Like your bit about Puffy.
Let's start with Meek Mill. He's not just any rapper. He's Philadelphia royalty, a self-made titan in the game who clawed his way to the top against all odds. For years, he's carried the scars of his public feuds, his run-ins with the law, and his battles within a music industry that chews up talent and spits out controversy. But this time, the stakes are higher than ever. Meek, once the poster child for resilience and reform, has now found himself entangled in allegations that are as explosive as they are murky. It all began with whispers, cryptic posts, vague interviews, and Meek's own public statements hinting at a betrayal so personal, so cutting, that it left fans and critics alike scrambling to connect the dots. The rapper didn't name names outright, but the full weight of what he was implying hung heavy in the air. He spoke of coercion, of being pushed into situations that left him feeling used and disrespected. It wasn't just about bruised egos or industry politics. This had the scent of something far more insidious.
I think it's over.
You think it's over?
I think it's over for him as like a figure in entertainment.
Right. But do you think it's over as him as far as
jail?
like he gets a cell right next to R. Kelly?
I don't think so.
And then there's the lawsuit. Rodney Little Rod Jones, a producer who once worked closely with Diddy, dropped a bombshell legal filing that made the industry do a collective double-take. In a sprawling document filled with damning allegations, Jones painted a picture of manipulation, exploitation, and betrayal. He claimed that he'd been intoxicated during an encounter with P. Diddy and woke up disoriented, unsure of what had happened to him. But that wasn't all.
Rumors are that Diddy was running some kind of Epstein-type deal where he was filming everybody. Right?
That's the rumors, yeah. I don't know that there's any proof or anything other than that.
The lawsuit also included allegations that Diddy had a romantic relationship with a rapper from Philadelphia, a rapper who, the lawsuit suggested, had also once dated Nicki Minaj. You don't have to be a detective to figure out who that points to. The internet predictably exploded. Videos resurfaced of Meek Mill and Diddy partying together, laughing, and seemingly enjoying each other's company. Critics pointed to old poolside clips of the two men donning matching outfits, as if the wardrobe choice alone was evidence of something deeper. Gossip forums buzzed with theories, and social media lit up with hashtags as fans debated whether the allegations were baseless rumors or the unearthing of a long-hidden truth. And here's where it gets even messier. Instead of addressing the allegations with the usual polished statements and carefully worded denials, Meek Mill seemingly doubled down on the chaos. Social media posts were deleted, replaced with cryptic messages about loyalty and betrayal. In one particularly heated moment, Meek lashed out at DJ Academics, a media personality who had dissected the lawsuit in painstaking detail during a live stream. The feud escalated into threats, accusations of fabricating evidence, and a bizarre claim from Meek that the lawsuit itself was artificially generated. It was the kind of spectacle that only the internet in 2024 could produce. Messy, public, and dripping with the kind of drama that keeps fans glued to their screens.
The 90s.
The music business. It's a lot of people.
It's not just the music business. It's like, it's the extortion business.
Well, I mean, the rap game was crazy. That's a thing a lot of people don't realize is like, back in the day, especially like early rap game, you weren't just going to play at, what's the random theater that you would play in LA? What's like a...
Right.
But if you think this is just about a feud between two famous men, think again. The allegations against Diddy don't stop at Meek Mill. For years, there have been murmurs about the music mogul's private life. Rumors of secret relationships, questionable parties, and a lifestyle that straddled the line between decadent and dangerous. Little Rod's lawsuit only added fuel to the fire, with claims that Diddy's events were meticulously documented. Every room allegedly bugged with cameras. The implications are staggering. If even a fraction of this is true, it means there's a treasure trove of evidence out there waiting to be uncovered. Evidence that could implicate not just Diddy, but an entire circle of high-profile figures who turned a blind eye, or worse. And let's not forget the other players in this unfolding drama. Usher, for instance, has found his name dragged into the fray, with fans pointing to his history with Diddy as a potential connection to the allegations. Years ago, in an interview with Howard Stern, Usher spoke about living with Diddy as a teenager, describing the experience as wild and something he wouldn't subject his own children to. At the time, the comments seemed like harmless anecdotes, the kind of light gossip that fuels late-night talk shows. But now, with the lawsuit casting a shadow over everything, those old quotes have taken on a much darker tone.
Moved to New York City, and I lived with Sean Puffy Combs for a year.
That's the crazy thing.
And then there's the car crash. Meek Mill's near-fatal accident could have easily been written off as bad luck, a tragic twist of fate in an already turbulent life. But Meek himself has hinted that there's more to the story, that the crash might not have been an accident at all. The timing, the circumstances, it's all too convenient for some. Online sleuths have already begun connecting the dots, spinning theories that range from calculated sabotage to outright conspiracy. Whether or not there's any truth to these claims, one thing is clear. The story isn't going away anytime soon. What's perhaps most shocking about all of this is the silence from Diddy himself. For a man who's built an empire on his ability to control the narrative, his lack of response has been deafening. No statements, no interviews, no attempts to clear his name, just a wall of silence that only adds to the intrigue. Is it a calculated move? A way to let the storm blow over? Or is it something else entirely, a sign that the allegations are hitting closer to home than he'd like to admit?
There's people on both sides, right? There's the people on the right that are trying to nail the people that are on the left with this. There's people that are journalists that are trying to nail the people that were involved in this.
This is it, yeah.
And they've managed to keep that list from coming out, which shows you how powerful certain people are. That should show you a lot. That should be terrifying.
And while the public grapples with the allegations, the industry is left to reckon with its own complicity. For years, Diddy has been one of the most powerful figures in music, a gatekeeper whose approval could make or break a career. How many people knew about the rumors and chose to stay silent? How many looked the other way, unwilling to risk their own standing by speaking out? These are questions that no one seems eager to answer, but they're questions that demand to be asked. As the dust continues to settle, or perhaps more accurately, as the storm continues to build, it's becoming increasingly clear that this isn't just another celebrity scandal. It's a reckoning, a moment that could redefine how the industry handles power, privilege, and accountability. For Meek Mill, it's a fight for his reputation, his career, and perhaps even his sense of self. For Diddy, it's a battle that could determine whether he emerges as a misunderstood icon or a disgraced figure whose empire crumbles under the weight of its own secrets.
That's what people were saying, and maybe everybody's a conspiracy theorist now, but that's what people are saying about the Diddy situation. Like when the feds rolled up, with the Hummers and shit, they were like, it wasn't about Diddy. It was about if there were tapes of powerful people there.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
They were the ones that called. They're like, I need to protect myself, so go in there with all the things and rip any tapes or any evidence.
And yet, for all the headlines, the tweets, and the think pieces, the most important stories might still be the ones we haven't heard. The voices that are still too afraid to speak, the truths that are still buried beneath layers of fear, loyalty, and silence. Because if there's one thing scandals like this have taught us, it's that the real story is always deeper, darker, and more complicated than it seems. And just when it seemed like the fire couldn't burn any hotter, the focus shifted from the swirling accusations to the people directly caught in the crossfire. The names, the faces, the relationships. Every thread in this tangled web was being pulled tighter and tighter. At the heart of it all were the stories of those who claimed they'd been chewed up and spit out by the machine that Diddy allegedly orchestrated behind closed doors. These weren't just allegations anymore. They were deeply personal accounts, each one more chilling than the last. And the fallout wasn't just professional, it was emotional, psychological, and, for some, life-altering. Take Meek Mill, for example. For years, he had been celebrated as an unflinching voice of the streets, a man who wore his scars like medals of honor. But now he was openly addressing feelings of betrayal, of being manipulated by someone he once considered a mentor. According to sources close to the situation, Meek's relationship with Diddy had soured long before the lawsuit ever hit the public eye. And while Meek had chosen to air some of his grievances in cryptic social media posts, insiders suggested there was far more to the story than he was letting on. Behind the scenes, whispers of coercion and manipulation painted a picture of a man pushed to his breaking point, forced into situations that no amount of fame or fortune could justify.
One of the allegations was that Diddy had with a Philadelphia rapper who dated Nicki Minaj. Immediately, people identified the rapper as Meek Mill.
But Meek wasn't the only one with a story to tell. Usher, the golden boy of R&B, had his own history with Diddy that was now being dragged into the spotlight. Years ago, the two had lived together, a mentorship arrangement that was supposed to mold Usher into a superstar. And it worked, at least on the surface. But what really happened during those formative years? Old interviews resurfaced, including one where Usher vaguely described the experience as wild and something he wouldn't wish on his own children. At the time, it seemed like harmless banter, anecdotes from a young artist navigating the industry, but in the context of these allegations, those comments suddenly felt much darker, much more loaded. What had he seen? What had he been exposed to? Fans were left to speculate, and the silence from Usher's camp only added to the unease.
Right?
No, not really.
Come on.
But hey, it was curious. I got a chance to see some things.
Yeah, but you were 13. What were you seeing?
I went there to see the lifestyle.
And then there were the others. People whose names hadn't yet made it into the headlines, but whose stories were beginning to leak through the cracks. One source, who had worked closely with Diddy for years, described an environment where power dynamics ruled every interaction. It wasn't just about the parties, they said. It was about control. Everything was calculated. Who got invited, who got left out, who was allowed to speak, and who was silenced. And if you stepped out of line, there were consequences. The source stopped short of detailing what those consequences might have been, but the implication was clear. This wasn't just a man with a penchant for excess. It was someone who allegedly wielded his power like a weapon. But perhaps the most damning revelations came from the lawsuit itself. Lil Rod's claims painted a picture of a world that was equal parts glamorous and grotesque. The allegations of hidden cameras, of rooms allegedly bugged to record every whispered conversation, every private moment. It was enough to make your skin crawl. And it wasn't just the victims who were worried. Industry insiders began to speculate about who else might have been caught on tape. Politicians, executives, A-list celebrities, all of them had reportedly attended Diddy's infamous gatherings. And if those tapes existed, what kind of leverage could they hold? The mere possibility sent shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond.
Everybody who tells the stories like, I saw I go upstairs and these dudes are like right on the couch.
Yeah.
And then I go in this room and these guys are It's like,
And pros. Like, apparently he was getting male gigolos to girls.
girls.
Yeah, that was one of the rumors, like the
Male
freak off. So he would
gigolos.
hire the professional to have with the girls, and I think he would watch allegedly.
And yet, for all the outrage, for all the calls for accountability, there was still a palpable sense of fear among those who had been closest to Diddy. One former associate described the atmosphere as paranoid, with people scrambling to distance themselves from the mogul. Social media accounts were scrubbed, photos were deleted, and long-standing relationships were suddenly complicated. But despite the exodus, there were some who remained loyal, or at the very least, silent. Was it out of fear, out of loyalty, or was it because they too had something to lose if the full truth came out? The lawsuits themselves are a labyrinth of allegations, each one more jaw-dropping than the last. Take the case brought forward by Rodney Little Rod Jones, the producer who claims he lived and worked in close proximity to Diddy during the production of the Love album. His account spans over 70 pages, detailing a harrowing year of alleged manipulation and misconduct. According to Jones, Diddy's power wasn't just financial, it was psychological. The producer alleges that Diddy would openly brag about his connections in law enforcement and the legal world, making it clear that any attempt to fight back would be futile. And then there were the recordings. Jones claims to have proof, hundreds of hours of audio and video documenting Diddy's behavior during what he described as unimaginable situations. If those tapes are real, they could blow the case wide open.
He will be sued. And I say will be because nothing has been filed yet, by at least 120 people in the next 30 days.
But Jones isn't the only one. Other lawsuits have painted similarly grim pictures of what life was like for those caught in Diddy's orbit. One anonymous woman who filed her claim under New York's Adult Survivors Act accused Diddy of using his wealth and influence to isolate her from her support system. She alleged that he created a world where his word was law and any dissent was met with swift retaliation, financial, emotional, or otherwise. The lawsuit also describes a meticulously crafted cycle of control, where lavish gifts and promises of career opportunities were dangled like carrots, only to be yanked away the moment she stepped out of line. And while her identity remains protected, her accusations have sparked a wave of similar claims, suggesting that her experience may be far from unique. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of these lawsuits is the sheer scale of the alleged misconduct. These aren't isolated incidents. They're patterns repeated across years, across states, and across an ever-growing list of victims. One legal expert noted that the sheer number of allegations could point to systemic behavior, the kind of thing that doesn't just happen by accident. This is someone who built an empire on control, the expert said. And when you're dealing with someone who has that much money, that much power, and that much reach, the ripple effects are enormous. It's not just about what happened, it's about how many people had to look the other way for it to keep happening. And now, with the lawsuits piling up and the public finally starting to pay attention, it's clear that the walls are closing in. Meanwhile, the legal stakes continued to climb. Rumors circulated that law enforcement agencies were quietly building a case, piecing together evidence that could lead to criminal charges. Homeland Security's involvement only added to the speculation, with some suggesting that the raids on Diddy's properties were just the beginning. And if those tapes really did exist, they could serve as the smoking gun that turned this scandal into a full-blown legal catastrophe. But for now, it was all just speculation, enough to keep the public hooked, but not enough to bring the hammer down. Yet,
Caligula.
Okay, so then there's the question. It's like, can you take a completely normal person, give them power, and then they become that? Or does it take a power-hungry person that has this void that needs to be filled, and then when they are given that power, you see the worst version of them?
Ask your CIA boy. I bet he's got the answers. I bet he knows the exact formula.
To corrupting somebody
Yeah.
or to...
What happens?
Like-
What happens to these people?
what made all of this even more disturbing was the alleged pattern of threats and intimidation that had reportedly been used to keep victims quiet. According to multiple sources, Diddy and his inner circle had a history of employing scare tactics to maintain control. One alleged victim claimed they had been bombarded with calls and messages, each one more menacing than the last. Another described being followed, watched, as if to remind them that speaking out came with consequences. These weren't just isolated incidents, they were part of a broader culture of fear that seemed to permeate every corner of this story. And then there was the question of Justin Combs, Diddy's son, whose name had also been dragged into the controversy. The lawsuit alleged that Justin had been involved in some of the more unsavory aspects of his father's operations, including assisting in the organization of certain events. Whether or not those claims held water remained to be seen, but the mere association was enough to spark outrage. How much did he know? How much had he seen? And what, if anything, could he reveal about the allegations against his father?
Oh, man, I just had like a 3.5 hour cry.
The deeper you go, the darker it gets. This wasn't just a scandal, it was a reckoning, a moment that exposed the cracks in an empire built on power, influence, and a carefully curated image. And yet, for all the revelations, there were still so many unanswered questions. What really happened behind those closed doors? Who else was complicit? And perhaps most chillingly, how many more stories are out there waiting to be told? This story is far from over, and the stakes couldn't be higher. As the allegations continue to mount, the question isn't just whether Diddy's empire will survive. It's whether the music industry itself can withstand the fallout. Because if this case has shown us anything, it's that the truth has a way of coming out, no matter how deeply it's buried. The only question now is, who's next? All right, that's where we are leaving it for now. But trust us, this rabbit hole goes deeper than we've even begun to explore. What do you think? Are we looking at the tip of the iceberg, or is this as bad as it gets? Let us know in the comments, and as always, stay tuned for the next one. You won't want to miss it.